Hi everyone, welcome to Practical Electronics. In this tutorial we're going to look at putting together a parts list and placing an order for your components. We're also going to put together a list of basic components that you need to get started. So let's dive right in. In previous videos we looked at the fundamentals of electronics. We looked at electronic components and their properties, component arrangement, the math of electronics. We also built some of our first circuits, which was a 5-volt DC power supply and a 1 to 16 volt variable DC power supply with an input of 230 volt AC. We built basic circuits for us to take measurements and to compare with our calculations. We also built some circuits to drive loads. In this tutorial we're going to look at making a parts list and ordering components. In this lesson we're going to look at compiling a parts list from your circuit, making comparisons between different suppliers, ordering your components, and basic components and tools that you need to get started. Let's look at putting together your parts list. On the screen we have a circuit for a variable power supply which takes in 230 volts AC and gives out a variable output between 0 to 16 volt DC. Let's look at the components for this power supply. First, there's a transformer, a step-down transformer. Then we have a bridge rectifier. Then we have a number of capacitors throughout the circuit. What we also have is a fixed value resistor of 240 ohm and a variable resistor. We also have a voltage rectifier and a diode. So let's put together a parts list for the circuit. To create a part list, you need to create the number of columns that are going to store the information that you need for your parts. It's always good to have some part numbers from a number of suppliers. You could have 2 or 3 that you can use to compare. Right, so to create the parts list, you can use your component numbers just as you have them in your circuit. The description should be as descriptive as possible so that you know which components to get for your parts. Start with the transformer, then we get to the voltage regulator, and then we get to the capacitors in the circuit. Pay close attention to your component numbers and the values that you need. Also the types of components that you need to get. For capacitors you get different types of capacitors, so in this instance all the capacitors in the circuit are electrolytic capacitors. For example, if we had a number of ceramic capacitors, we will also add that to the description. It's always important to include the value of your component as well. So for the resistor, it's a 240 ohm resistor. For the variable resistor, we're going to specify the value, but also specify that it's a variable resistor so that we know which one to get. And lastly, we're going to put down the diode. Okay, then you can give the tab a number, just in case you're going to store a number of parts list for different circuits in one workbook. And once you're done, you can save it to your computer and just make sure that you give it a name that you're going to remember. So let's look at ordering components. For ordering of components, I'm going to show 3 different suppliers which you can use. Hopefully one of these will be our future sponsor and will only show our ordering process from them. First is Mantech. So in order to find your component, you go to the website and you search using your description. You use the search bar. Then you use the search bar and then you will look through the results that you get. So for the step-down transformer, once you search, you will get a list of transformers and then you need to go through the list to check which one is appropriate for your design. You will look at the form factor, and you will also look at the pricing. You will look at the form factor, and you will also pay attention to the pricing so that you can compare with other suppliers. What you can also do here is copy the part number and put it onto your parts list. This will assist if you're going to order via email, and you can just send them a list that has their part numbers already on it. The second supplier we're going to look at is Communica. Similar to the first one, you can use the search box for you to search, and you will look through the results that you get and also note their part number. Then third is RS Components. Similar to the other suppliers, you use the search bar to search for your component, and you take note of the part number that you get. Right, and then from there you will proceed to do the same for each of the components that you have. Right, another thing that you need to pay close attention to is the type of package that you get. So once you do a search, you need to pay close attention to the pictures and also the description of the products that you get to see. In similar fashion, you will keep comparing between the different suppliers that you're looking at. Pay close attention to the price and the minimum quantities that you're able to order. Right, we can fast forward through the others, and please do take note that for some suppliers you won't find all the parts that you need. So where you don't find anything, you can put in a blank and have in mind for future reference that that supplier doesn't provide that particular part. With your parts list, you can then save it and give it a good name so that you will always be able to find it. Now let's look at how you can place an order. Most of these suppliers will have an online platform that you can use to place your orders. But a good way to build a relationship with these suppliers is to be able to mail them your parts list and have an engagement with them through that channel. Right, so if you look at each of the websites, they will have contact details which will have a sales email address that you can use with your parts list attached. And be sure to hide the other supplier part numbers when you're sending to one supplier. You can either hide or create a copy of your parts list where you have completely deleted them. As I mentioned, by doing this, you are building a relationship with the suppliers, and they will keep in contact with you when they have future offers, which may be of benefit or of interest to you. To find these email addresses, you'll typically have to scroll down to the bottom of each website and look for a Contact Us page. The email address that you're looking for will be a sales email. Some of the sites may not have it directly, but most of them will do. So that's the email address that you will send your parts list as an attachment to. If a particular supplier doesn't have a sales email address, don't worry about it. You can use their online ordering platform for that. And here we see that RS does not have their sales email directly listed on their website, even though I know that they do have one. Okay, let's look at some basic components and tools that you need to get started with experimenting with electronics. On the screen is a list of components that you can use to get started. The first column shows the recommended quantities, and the second column shows the actual components that you would need to use. On the list we have some resistors, some capacitors, voltage regulators, and some light emitting diodes. Let's see which tools you can get to get started with this. First, you will need a breadboard, and the one that I would recommend is a set that you can get together with wires and a power supply that you can get from Takealot from 160 Rand. What you're also going to need is a multimeter, and I would suggest to get a low priced multimeter that will not break the bank. So as we can see on Takealot, they do have some options as well that you can use to get started. What you need is something that you can use to measure voltage and current. With that, you can get started. Thank you, and see you in the rest of the videos.